Something that most consumers hate to hear is that they have to maintain the stuff they buy. That way, it lowers the chances of it breaking down and you have to buy a replacement. Now, the companies that make the stuff you buy don't care if you maintain them because they want you to buy more products. That means it's up to you to decide if you want to follow their plans or keep that machine working for as long as possible. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this Toro branded lawnmower. And the problem is that we might have fixed it in the last video, but we want to make sure it's caught up on its maintenance so it'll keep working at its best for years to come. Now, we already replaced the broken blade cable in the last video, and the other cable is in great condition too. That means we're going to focus on what's left over, which is replacing that neglected air filter, check the valve clearances, service the wheels, which is sorely needed, and do an oil change. Now, you don't need to adjust the valves every year, but after a handful of years, it would be a good idea though. I almost forgot, since this engine was running a bit off in the last video, I would like to look at the carb and see if there's a problem with it. So I'm taking off the top cover and recoil, but not for the carb, but to help rotate the engine while checking the valve clearances. So what happened in the last video was that the engine was surging. Basically, it wasn't able to hold a constant speed. And even though they didn't complain about it, it bothers me enough to take a quick look at it. What I mean by a quick look is that I'm not going to take the carb off, but only the fuel bowl. But to start off, I would like to open the drain and see what comes out, and that's when we see something interesting. You can see a brown spot growing on the rag that I put under the carb to catch the fuel. That stain is actually dirt that's been caught in the lowest part of the bowl. And just for good measure, we'll take out the drain, that way we don't lose it. Now, there is a filter at the very bottom of the fuel tank, however, it's meant to capture large debris, while this dirt is much too small and can pass right through it. Next, we'll take off the screws holding the fuel bowl to the carb and then persuade it off the carb. Now, if you hadn't figured it out, I've got the mower tilted back to make filming just a little bit easier. So after gently getting the fuel bowl free from the carb, we can see that there's nothing terrible left inside it, and it was just the fine dirt that was in there. We'll just give it a quick wipe and dry up that gasoline, and as you can see, it's in great condition. But if yours is in really bad shape, you might need to do more cleaning to it. This would also be a great time to make sure that the main fuel jet is clear of any debris. Now obviously, this jet is not blocked in any way, but it needs to be as clear as it can be, otherwise the carb will have some problems. But because this carb did have some dirt inside it, it's probably better to pry out the cartridge and give it a good inspection. And with it out of the carb, it makes it a whole lot easier to see the opening in the jet, along with the other openings too. But to inspect the rest of the smaller openings, we'll need to separate the cartridge. And when we do, we see even more dirt that's been hiding inside it, which we'll need to clean up before putting it back together. But it's surprising that the other jets and openings are clear, which means we just need to give it a good spray with carb cleaner and then put it back together. So if you do have access to an ultrasonic cleaner, then you're welcome to use it, but a can of carb cleaner works well too. I know it's hard to believe it, but you don't need any fancy machines to clean a carb, just some wire, carb cleaner, and more importantly, time. Some are going to tell you that you need knowledge as well, which I can agree with, but that's what these videos are for. Once the cartridge is securely back together, we'll then install it back into the carb in the same orientation as we found it. So yes, you can install the fuel bowl backwards, however, it won't seat properly if it is, so keep an eye out for that. But if you're certain that you have a carb problem and don't wish to go through with all this hassle, then you might want to consider just ordering a brand new aftermarket carb instead. Once the screws are back on and tight, check that the fuel bowl is not crooked, otherwise the carb is going to start leaking, which is never a good thing. Now I'm very happy with the way this one's looking, so we'll move on to replacing that air filter base. Also, don't forget to connect that breather hose for the emissions system, otherwise unfiltered air can make its way into the engine. And if that does happen, the engine's going to wear out a whole lot faster than it should. Just be aware that this hose does not fit tightly on the port, so it could come loose after some time. So I'm going to do something that I don't typically do, which is to replace the air filter now instead of waiting. There's no real reason other than this is something I'm not selling since this is a coworker's machine. So next up, we're going to tackle the valve clearance inspection and adjustment if needed. Now you don't need to remove the spark plug, and in this case I'm going to leave it in, but it can make rotating the engine just a bit tougher. With the valve cover gone, we'll rotate the engine until one rocker arm is all the way down, while the one we're going to check is up and loose. I'll then take my 5/1000 of an inch feeler gauge and slide it into the clearance between the valve and the arm. Now it should just barely fit, but this one is much too loose in the clearance. This extra space can cause running, not to mention starting problems, so I'll just loosen the adjusting nut and the jam bolt. I'll then slide in the feeler gauge and turn the adjusting nut until it almost gets stuck. But if it does get stuck, then just turn the adjusting nut counterclockwise a bit and then try again. Once you're happy with how the feeler gauge sits in the clearance, then tighten the jam bolt. We'll then move on to the next arm by rotating the engine until the other arm is loose and the one we just checked is all the way down. We'll then repeat the same process on this arm, either loosening or tightening the clearance up. These clearances need to be checked every once in a while, so yes, you can check it every year if you want to. But you're probably going to find out that the clearances don't change that much, but at least you found out by checking them. So if you're experiencing hard starting when the engine is hot or even cold and you know the choke system is working, then you might want to check the clearances. But if you don't think you'll be able to do this job on your own, then you might want to ask someone to help you. And of course, your last resort is to take it to the repair shop, but don't be surprised by their recommendations and the quote. Just remember, their job is to make money and you can't blame them since they are a business. And since we don't need access to the top of the engine to make our rotations, we'll put the recoil and cover back on. This would also be a great time to clean and lubricate the recoil spring if the rope isn't retracting like it should be. Just be sure to use a thin lubricant on the spring, otherwise you could have a different problem later on. And with the engine cover back on, I like to move on to the wheels, which seem to be forgotten about quite often. Now this one is spinning quite well to begin with, but to keep it working that way, you should service them every couple of years. So my definition of servicing the wheels is to take them off, clean the axles or bolts in this case, and then lubricate them. Now you might not think that this is something worthwhile doing, but after several seasons, these wheels could become a hassle, making your job mowing the grass 10 times harder. Just remember that mowing the lawn can either be a test of your patience or something therapeutic. It's just up to you as to which one it's going to be. And the very last item we want to take care of is of course the most important one, which is the oil change. So I took the liberty of draining the oil the last time I used the mower, that way it'll help to get out as much of the dirty oil as possible. Now because of the type of oiling system that this engine has, it's important that you don't overfill the oil. This might take you several attempts, but it's better than the alternative, which is too much or too little oil. Once we get the oil into the engine, we better start it to make sure that we didn't mess something up. Well, it seems to be running just the way it should be, with the drive system working and also the blade system, which was the problem in the last video. Now, I do understand life gets in the way sometimes and maintenance on your lawn equipment is forgotten about. Believe me, I know. But just so long as it happens within a reasonable time frame, it should be okay. This one, however, went on just a bit further than it should have. The worst part was that I reminded my coworker at the beginning of each season and they still put it off. And it basically took the machine becoming unusable for them to do anything about it. So my question is, how bad would your mower have to get before you decide to do anything about it? I understand it costs money to maintain your mower, but I've also heard that buying a new mower is even more money. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.